Welcome to this fourth seminar or webinar from the Danish academic research community, trying to sort of give a view of what's going on. I hope you've seen us before. I'm Henrik Christensen. I'm one of the moderators of this series. I'm a Dane, got my education in Denmark, in Aalborg, in the very northern part of Denmark. And then I got my, then I was active in Denmark, then I moved to Stockholm, the worst thing you can do if you're a Dane. And then sort of been traveling around the world. So now I'm a professor at UC San Diego, where I direct the robotics center, but still with a very strong connection both to the European robotics community, but also to the Danish community, where I've been engaged both with some of the universities and with some of the companies there. So I hope you are aware, and I hope you've enjoyed. There's been 3 earlier webinars, started out in Odense, which is also hosting today, went to Aalborg, and then we went to the capital, just outside of capital, to the Danish Technical University, to get sort of exposure to the academic community that was going on there. If you haven't seen those 3 webinars, I would encourage you to go to the Danish Robotics Society, Academic Robotics Society's YouTube channel, where you also see this. There you can see these. And there's a lot of really cool research going on. Also research that you might not expect. So, you know, there's everything from dancing robots to industrial robots to flying robots. So you're going to see quite a variety of different kinds of robots, which is really cool. So there's a very strong and very diversified community in Denmark. And often people sort of ask that why is there all of this going on in Denmark? It actually dates back almost 40 years. So this is not something that sort of happened overnight, where, you know, the people in Denmark said, you know what, we should be robotics. So it actually started out with a shipyard in Odense, which sort of became the most modern shipyard in the world. They had more than 80 robots welding entire sort of segments of ships, doing this. And in the academic community, there was a very charismatic professor, John Perham, that sort of got the academic stuff started, which was really cool. And then eventually, you know, labor prices in Korea implied that doing stuff in Odense, where they have, you know, good hourly wages, was a little bit of a challenge. But slowly we've then seen this move away from the shipyard. The shipyard doesn't exist anymore. But now there's all of these other things, but it grew sort of an academic community that became very strong, both in Odense, in Aalborg, and now actually even at some of the universities that you haven't been exposed to yet, you saw a very, very strong community. But it also created a way for a lot of companies to think about, how can we leverage this technology? How can we use it? So today there's a very rich community of companies that are leveraging robotics technology. There's a very strong academic community. Some of you, I'm sure, know about some of the very famous robotics companies. We are going to talk a little bit more about not the big ones, but a number of the companies that are incredibly successful today. So in many respects, Denmark has really grown into the European Silicon Valley for robotics, and become sort of a great example of how can you actually do economic growth, how can you grow the number of people, and all of this to build a sector. You know, if you've asked me 20 years ago, so Denmark is going to be the leading country in robotics, I said, no, I don't think so. That's partly Danish. You know, we are sort of don't think you're anything special. But actually, I think now that I'm in the US and I see it from the outside, you can see that there's a lot of stuff going on. But it's not only leading edge research, it is a complete ecosystem that has sort of taken off, which is nice. And today we wanted to sort of shift the focus away from not only talking about the academic efforts, but also sort of the third leg of the universities. Universities do research, they do education, but the third leg is translation. How do we make sure whatever happens actually gets translated into the real world? And so that will be the focus today. We will have a few examples of how is technology actually being leveraged out there. How do you build the business case? How do you drag research out of the researchers in such a way that you can actually commercialize it and build real business cases around it? One of the things that's also happened related to this is both that there are sort of institutes in between, but also there are now sort of clusters that are enabling this, that are sort of providing the help of figuring out how do you actually do this the right way. And one of those, and probably the most successful in Denmark, is the cluster in Odense, which has existed for quite some time. And there they now have a new cluster called Odense Robotics, which covers both robotics and drones. And I'm very pleased that Christina Vancher is here as the director of that. So to sort of run the local program, I've got to hand it over to Christina and have her sort of do an introduction and then run the show for the various cases we got to see. So Christina, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm very pleased to moderate this session today. I'm the network manager of Odense Robotics, not the director, but network manager. And I'm pleased when I was asked to do this moderation, I said, of course I will. For the past 2.5 years, I focused on how to drive innovation forward, and in particular, how to drive all the great ideas that are in the research centers and all the universities in Denmark to drive it into the private companies. So when asked, I said, of course, yes, and it's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. We have an exciting program today, as Henrik just shared, and we're very glad to see it. Let me see if I can share it with you. Here you go. So the program is set up that first I'll tell you about Odense Robotics and how it's Denmark's new robot and drone cluster. It's been running for many years, and I'll give you a brief story about that. Later on, after this presentation, I'll move into a panel discussion where the panel will, from universities and private companies, tell their stories of how Danish robotic research has cultivated innovation and contributed to their success. It will be built by 3 cases. Since it's virtual, we are all sitting in different locations. So it will be in case by case. So we'll start at the University of Southern Denmark, and then we'll move on and Technicon, and then we'll move on to Aalborg University with Turf Tank, and last but not least, we'll move on to DTU and Agco. But we will, of course, make sure to introduce them better at a later stage. For now, I want to tell you something more. Sorry, here we go. Of course, do ask all the questions you want to within robotics and drones. And on this, any questions you have, you post them on YouTube and we will see them. We'll do our best to answer them live. There is a 20-second delay. So if you really want someone in particular to answer that question, feel free to write in the name. There. So let's begin with giving a presentation to Odense Robotics, so you know what we have done for the many, many years and what was just initiated. So Odense Robotics is Denmark's robot and drone cluster. And as Henrik said, we've had robotics and research in it for many, many years. In 2002, the cluster, RoboCluster, was initiated, and several other clusters were initiated as well, such as Odense Robotics, US, Denmark. However, we merged all 3 clusters into one and gave them a new brand, but an old name. So Odense Robotics is today the national cluster in Denmark. It's a growing industry in Denmark, as Henrik just told us about. We have more than 300 companies and many employees, and we're actually expected this to grow in 3-fold. So that's why the cluster really has its name. What we do in Odense Robotics is we bring the ecosystem together. We have a secretariat in Odense, but we also have 4 regional hubs across the country, and they're actually situated, you can see in the dark spots in the map, in Denmark. The dark spots in the map actually also show where our university centers are, and that's Thus, that's where innovation grow and our companies grow. So we now have regional offices across the country. It's a small country, but it still makes sense that we have regional offices where people can meet. We have 7 knowledge partners, and we're happy to have 3 of them present today at University of Southern Denmark, Aalborg University, and DTU. We also have international cluster collaborations across Europe and across the world. And we're aiming for more than 300 companies and organizations to be members of our cluster. And currently, we've just been live for a month. We have 100 and plus companies. So we're very happy that everyone are going and joining us in this journey towards growing our robotics industry. So the cluster is financed by the Ministry of Higher Education and Science and the Danish Board of Business Development, plus additional funds coming from national programs and funds, European programs and funds, and also from private companies that are funding initiatives for companies within a specific field. So what we do exactly is that the industry needs drives our focus areas. So we know there's an increasing demand for new solutions. So we help companies develop new products and technologies. We do this by creating collaboration projects between universities and private companies, creating groups where you can work in a specific area and grow together. We also help companies strengthen their foundation for growth because scaling up is of course, we have to look outside of Denmark, and a scale up strategy as soon as we can is a way of helping the companies. We also have a very successful startup, which is situated right in Odense. And here we offer commercial and tech support to startups so they can successfully enter the market. We also bring together industry professionals in networking groups to share insight. We have a CEO network. We have a network for mobile robots in healthcare industry. So networks where people get together and focus on a specific topic and then do that for maybe 3 or 4 meetings a year. We also have, of course, within HR and communication. And last but not least, we provide a platform for the industry to get noticed, meet peers and potential customers. We are a gold certified cluster, so we're looking forward to continuing this journey. Now, the partners that we have to drive innovation forward in this field of robotics and drones are 7 strong universities and RTOs. So Aalborg University, Aarhus University, the Design School Kolding, University of Southern Denmark, the Danish Technological Institute, the Danish Technical University, and Force Technology. Those partners, you're meeting 3 today. And if you've not heard in-depth their research, then I urge you to, once this webinar is over, to go and see all the other presentations that have been done at the 3 universities, Aalborg in Southern Denmark and DTU. Now I could speak for many hours, but we created actually a very short video, which will say more about our services. So I'd like to share this with you. I'm hoping it works.
Robotics, automation and drones have huge potential to add value to markets worldwide. Odense Robotics is Denmark's national cluster for robotics and drones. We help companies across the country develop new products and technologies and drive growth. Creating successful startups, developing new products and technologies, making companies more competitive globally. We bind the ecosystem together, connecting companies with leading researchers. Join us and participate in projects and events. Access technical knowledge and industry insights. Secure funding for new development. Meet partners, customers and peers in Denmark and internationally. Make your mark by putting your company in the spotlight. Join us and realize your potential. Let's accelerate innovation and growth together.
I'm just learning how to unmute.
Robotics.
Sorry. So in principle or in basic, you just heard it. It's the robotics cluster is national. It's for everyone to all our robotics and automation drone industry to join. And together we're driving innovation forward, both for our startups, for our scale-ups, and for our larger companies. Now, I would like to see that we need to go to the next session. I know there might be questions, but if you want to know more about Odense Robotics, you go to our website, and there you can also see about memberships, etc., etc. This was the presentation from now. I would love to go on now to the panel discussion. And we have created it such a way that for each of our speakers, we'll have a set. So how it will happen is that first our researcher for 1 minute will tell them about their research they're doing. Then we have the private company that for 5 minutes will tell them about their company and what kind of innovation work they've done together with the researcher. Following that, there'll be a very short dialogue between the two, and where I'll ask some questions, and feel free to ask questions as well. We'll go through these 3 cases one by one, and then it'll be followed by an overall panel discussion with more general questions. And you in the audience may ask, and you just use the YouTube chat function that you have to the right of your screen. So I think that's it. Henrik Gordon Petersen, professor at University of Southern Denmark. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Christina. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. And why don't you start, and then you can give the word to Kasper Hansen, CEO, and I'll stop my sharing.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Yes, so I'm Henrik Gordon Petersen, professor at SDU Robotics at University of Southern Denmark, located in Odense. We have done a webinar, so I'll just do a very, very short summary now. We are around 80 robotics scientists at our university. We work with robotics for industrial manufacturing, for medical applications, and for elderly care. We have a very strong tradition for doing robotics in collaboration with commercial partners and also public institutions, municipalities. We are strongly embedded in the Odense Robotics cluster. And if you look at my hair color, you can probably also see I've been around for a while. And actually, Henrik Christensen mentioned the Lindø shipyard at the beginning, and I was actually already there when we had the collaboration in the 90s with Lindø. I was a young scientist then. Then we have, for end users, we have, for example, Lego and Danfoss. We have hospitals, elderly homes, municipalities, as I said. And many of the companies are located around Odense, but one of our key partners is actually not located in Odense, since they have their headquarters in north of Aarhus, between Aarhus and Aalborg, and that is Technicon, where we have the owner of Technicon, Kasper Hansen, here. He is one of our key partners, and he will now discuss the company and what they're doing. So please, Kasper.
Thank you very much, Henrik. And I'll just give a short talk about Technicon. First of all, my name is Kasper, and I'm the founder and CEO of Technicon, and also one of the companies that I will go to talk about later. I'm also a member of the board of directors of the Manufacturing Academy Denmark, as well as the Odense Robotics. So I'm very pleased to be here. Technicon is a 50 employee company focusing on curiosity and collaboration. And we are focusing in flexible automation, and everything we do is focused around cobots and the flexibility in automation, because we strongly believe that that's a necessity for that in the industry. We built a lot of turnkey solutions, and we do that because we want to help the industry automate and get rid of the 3Ds, the dirty, the dull, and the dangerous jobs, and we see a strong potential in doing so. But we also believe that companies are getting better and better at integrating robots by themselves. So one of the strong things that we are seeking for is actually to disintegrate the integrators. So we're providing a lot of products directly on our e-commerce web platform because we think that the power to do robotics should lie with the operator. Then system integrators as us should help building all the difficult cases. We should make new lands, and we do that by working together with professors like Henrik Gordon Petersen. And one of the cases that we have built together with Henrik is actually this world first COVID-19 swap robot that was built in a conjunction together with Lifeline Robotics. Actually, the co-founder of Odense Robotics, Esben, was a part of that. The key technology is developed at SDU, and we as a system integrator can build the system and actually getting the whole wrapping around it. And I think that is the key to our success in Denmark, that we have a strong focus on the collaboration from university through technology partners directly onto the shop floor, or in this case, into the test tents and test facilities around, so that we can actually gain all the benefits at a very high speed, and we have our knowledge combined together in a close collaboration. So that is one of the cases that we have built together with the university. Another part reaches way far out in the ecosystem, and that is our flex draper, which is all about laying up pre-preg carbon fibers, which is a process that is extremely difficult and to this point on have not been automated successfully yet. This is a combined stuff where we here have SDU, Aalborg University, and also Technological University of Denmark, actually the three universities that have been doing webinars. We have an aerospace company called Therma, which is the end user, and then we have us, Technicon, as a technology provider, together with the Dutch NLR that can provide all the stuff, all the certification and knowledge about doing this. And the reason why we actually succeeded doing this really tricky automation is because we are working together from university to system integrators and down to the process specific know-how from Therma. And I think that is one of the key points when we are talking about automation. This is so interdisciplinary, it's so diverse, and we really need to work together. And I think that is one of the key benefits and key assets that we have, namely that we can work together in clusters like Odense Robotics, or just like with other peers and collaborators around the industry. So I guess that was a very quick 5-minute tour around who is Technicon and how we have collaborated with virtually all manufacturing universities in Denmark. I'm hoping for more questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We're very happy to hear this. It sounded very interesting. I have some questions for you. So how do you see the future role distribution between robot system providers and end customers? Yeah.
I think it would be natural that technologies are democratized. So we will see that more and more products are coming out. You can see on the screen right now, you can see Canadian products, you can see Danish products, you can see worldwide global brands that the end user are able to use by themselves. So I guess that in the future, we will see that companies doing integration on their own, and that would force system integrators to do a change in their way of doing business and maybe lean more towards the more high-end integrations, and that calls for collaboration with the universities.
Henrik, did you want to add to this one, to this collaboration you've done together with the Technicon?
Yes, I can do that. So and it also adds a bit to what Kasper said here at the end, because traditional system integrators, their role, it will be changed, and Kasper, I think he is among the ones that are most ahead compared to others in terms of this new trend. where end users will get a bigger role in the integration, and the real difficult parts will actually involve the universities, but much of the work can be done by the end user itself. That's the way we should go. It should be easy to reprogram robots. And I believe we share this view with Technicon, and that's probably also one of the reasons why we have a really good collaboration.
Yeah. Are there any important challenges that the robot providers or integrators are facing, do you think?
Yeah. If we're talking about the end users, we need to make all the components, all the technologies way more accessible, because it should be easy to use, it should be fast to deploy, and basically, why should an end user call a system integrator to install a robot if you're not calling a software engineer to get Spotify working on your cell phone? I think we would see that demand. But it also tells that the system integrators, they really need to know how to make a business in this new environment, because otherwise they could potentially become obsolete. But I see a strong potential for system integrators reaching beyond what's possible to do on the very basic integrations. So this is a skill game where the system integrators really need to work together with knowledge partners to be able to do the very difficult parts. And then on the end user side, it's all about volume, because you can get a lot of robots out there if the end users can actually do it by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I can add to this that it is definitely also the job of us and the other universities in Denmark and worldwide to help speeding up this process of overcoming these challenges that Kasper just mentioned.
Exactly. Did you want? So how do you see the future side? I know this is a question I will also ask, but how do you see the future side of how do you see the future of the commercial side of Danish robotics? Henrik, will you start with that one, having had a long story in the field of robotics?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Of course. How do you see the future of the commercial side of Danish robotics?
I would say that there's a strong future here, because the Danish market is very demanding, because we have a lot of small industries where there's a high degree of, there's a lot of changes. There's not long-term productions running for many years. So the demands for robotics is high, and this will push the technologies to be developed for this, and then gradually be going out worldwide. I believe that's also one of the reasons, for example, why Universal Robots, for example, came, because in Denmark the market was discovered that this was needed, and the market in other countries was a bit more conservative than compared to us. Yeah.
Kasper, did you want to add to this one?
No, I completely agree with Henrik, and I think this new trend that robotics is just empowering the operator. I think that is the commercial side of it, and it will help on the shortage of labor in many countries, because we are empowering people.
Exactly. So thank you very much for this. I know you'll stay on for the panel dialogue. So now I'll actually move on to our next presenters, and let me just share this. Hold on. Here we go. It is sharing the wrong thing. Sorry. So the next presenters will be Thomas Bach from Aalborg University and Olav Jørgensen from Tank. And I'm very happy to have you here. The same concept. So Thomas, you'll introduce, and then you'll give the floor to Olav Jørgensen, CEO of Tank. Welcome.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you to Henrik for the introduction in the very beginning. So my name is Thomas Bach. I'm a professor and the head of Department of Electronic Systems at Aalborg University. And I also coordinate some of the activities across the university within the area of robotics. If you want to explore our research and our results, You can find the second installment of this webinar. You can find it online where you found the YouTube video for this. And there is our presentation and our of our research from December, and it gives you some insight into activities that span important dimensions from robotics, with input from mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, medicines, and art. So I encourage you to have a look at that if you are interested. I'm here today with Olav Jørgensen, who is CEO of the company Turf Tank. And Turf Tank is a successful company that, as Christina said, are making their marks internationally. And I think Olav will explain more. The reason we decided that this would be a good match is that while the title of this webinar is actually From Academic Research to Real World Applications, I think if one sort of interprets that as a linear process from research into real world applications, in reality, a lot of times it goes the other way. It's something in real world, people get on with things, robotics, they realize there's some issues, some problems, and they turn to the research space to find solutions. And in the case of Turf Tank, this is how it started, I believe, but of course, Olav can explain more. But this started with the real-world applications and a company that probably didn't know that what they were doing was actually very difficult. They just did it, solved the problems. But now, recently, they have turned to the university again, or not again, I shouldn't say again, but they've turned to the university, and we are now expanding our collaboration with Turf Tank. So, yeah, please, Olav.
Thank you, Thomas. And that's definitely the case. So also just short introduction, my name is Olav Jørgensen. I'm the CEO of Turf Tank. And we are indeed, as Thomas said, very, very happy with the collaboration that we have embarked on last year with Aalborg University. Let me just bring up a short presentation that I prepared for you guys. And I thought it would make sense to quickly show you what the robotics. So this is how we make our mark, and building on some of the things that Thomas says. Yes, indeed, we took a long time ago the idea of a problem that is a very hands-on problem in something that the most of us enjoy, namely doing sports on a grass field, and applying a mobile robot to solve that problem. That is something that we do in Turf Tank. We're headquartered in Hjørring, so just half an hour north of Aalborg. We do everything here from product development, production, and then we have, which cannot surprise many, a strong organization also based in the States, serving many of our customers. It's very simple. You have many lines that need to be drawn, and our friends in the US are very fond of American football, and hence we have this application. I think another thing that you saw in the video, which is very clear for us, is that our customers today are very, very simple users of a mobile robot. These are not able to do any degree of integration. There is no robotic skills or background with our end users. Their main background has probably been 20 years mowing the lawns and making sure they have enough fertilizers. So this is, of course, a very important thing for us to think about how we find or are able to build an application which is so easy to use that our users are able to use the robot like they do today in everyday life. And they are, so we have customers all over the country, but also across the states. Now, how is our product, our cooperation going with Aalborg University? It's clear that this is also something that has come a long way. So from being an idea in Lego Mindstorm to the product that we have in the market today, it's been a long way coming, and we're working with engineers. But we also see the advancements, of course, that is going on in the broader market within mobile robots, and we want to make sure that we stay ahead of the curve. So, as mentioned, we have last year started a strategic partnership with Aalborg University. We have a number of projects that we could envision young people with bright minds and new, fresh ideas could have an idea of. And obviously, for us, this is a way of starting. Maybe to work on existing products, existing projects on a product that we already have, or contemplating new ideas for future product iteration. Additionally, our cooperation together with the university is also an opportunity for us to learn and meet young, bright minds, and that means that within the last two projects that we were running, we actually have two of these people working together with us. Today in the company. We are contemplating a long list of new projects also for the spring, and I think one of the very important things that we learn that we appreciate in cooperation with Aalborg University is the problem-based learning methodology, where we are able to take out longer periods of time working with a concrete dilemma problem where let's say over a 6-month period, we work with a group or multiple groups of people, students from the university, really bringing that up to a larger project, but also being able to go into more detail in our support as a company in working together with the corporation. So we're very, very happy with that and see many great things. And to summarize in terms of where we started, yes, we did start to have the product as such in the beginning, but we see in moving ahead, but also building a future of turf tank for many years ahead. This close collaboration is an integral part of how we see our business.
You need to unmute, Christina.
Sorry, I needed to unmute my microphone. So thank you for your presentation. You certainly made your mark. I enjoyed it very much, and it seemed like you had a very strong working relationship with the university for a long period of time, and they assisted in your development of your products, right? So I actually have a question. So this university industry collaboration, it goes two ways, and it has value for the private partner, but also for the university. So I'd like you, perhaps Thomas Bach, you can begin on elaborate on the value proposition seen for both the partners and perhaps give us an example.
Yes, I do agree that it goes both ways. It has to have value for both partners, and what Olaf has described is actually a relationship that's just started. We are still in the early phases, and I think we have a model where relationships like this often start with students engaging with the company, and of course the students, their supervisors, they also engage, and suddenly you hire some of the students as you've done, or you hire a PhD student, and then it sort of develops from there. What we get from these collaborations with companies are often some insight into application areas that we typically don't have. We know some of the technologies behind what you're doing, like the GPS, the road, or the navigation, and the principles behind that. But there's a lot of application insight that researchers can be inspired by. And there's some challenges that we don't necessarily see when we work in the lab or we do some better type prototyping. We don't see these challenges, and you see them because you work with these things every day and you sell products that experience these challenges. And we love a good problem. So bring those problems to us, and we will see what we can do.
I love it how you say you love a good problem. So Olav Janssen, would you perhaps elaborate on this, or was it okay? Because otherwise I'm dying to ask you, how do you make sure that there's an alignment between what you want to do and the researchers what they want to do?
I mean, I can start on that one. I think it's clear that like Thomas says, it is like a mutual beneficial relationship, and it has to be. And that also means that we kind of, when we start off a strategic partnership, like we have done last year, we were not only focused on let's say a small concrete problem statement, but on a bigger, I would say, agenda in terms of how we can see a long-term relationship benefit. We as a company, it's clear that we have a number of commercial interests that are, of course, in our everyday life, number 1 and 2 and 3 on the list. And secondarily, we have a very big ambition to find smart people and talents within the group and potentially get them on board. But I think it's also our obligation in such a mutual beneficial collaboration to find ways where we can also help the university on a number of research projects, on whether it requires going outside of the box of what we would otherwise think of commercially, and then invest time, effort, and maybe also resources in these things, so that we can find these mutually beneficial long-term relationship work for both parties, I would say.
Thank you very much.
Can I add to that just one short thing? I think it's also key to this is the people who participate, that you get researchers, they get to know your people and the other way around. That is, you need to spend some time on that in the very beginning, and that helps you. Building on that relationship it helps you align expectations.
Mm-hmm. I think that building that trust is something that we'll elaborate on in the panel debate, because it's a big issue of how do you get students to enter the door to private companies? How do you build the trust between the company and the researchers? So now I'd like to say thank you to the two of you. You'll stay on for the panel debate, and I will love to welcome DTU and Lazaros Nalpantidis to the dialogue. You are associate professor at DTU, and you will, together with Morten Bilde, you will talk about first your research, and then you will go welcome the floor to Morten Bilde from Agco. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's a pleasure to be here among such a great panel. As you said, I'm an associate professor in the Technical University of Denmark, DTU, which is located in the capital of the country, in Copenhagen. And we, as DTU, have been doing robotics for numerous years, and you can see the details in the episode by DTU, of course. But we are recently experiencing this paradigm change towards incorporating all the latest tools from artificial intelligence, and we are working on making robots autonomous. Autonomy is the name of the future for us. We are working towards bringing together the robots together with AI and deploying them in real applications. So in a discussion we had, Christina, we said like that academic research in robotics goes beyond the campus, and sometimes it's actually starting from beyond the campus. It's actually coming towards the campus, and such a case is our collaboration with Agco. So I'm very happy to have Morten Bilde from Agco, and he can say a little bit about how they are incorporating robotics in their business. But for us, it's a great pleasure to be able to work closely with the industry, be inspired by the problems that they have, and hopefully provide solutions or insights on how to solve those problems. So Morten?
Thank you. Let me just share my my screen here. You see my presentation now?
No, we do not see it. So share the screen again, please. There, we can see it almost. There we go.
Here you go. Okay,
there
sorry. As said, my name is Morten Bjelde, and I'm here to represent the global company Agco by and large, but also more specifically our Danish engineering subdivision based in Randers, Denmark, of all places in the world. But let me start with the bigger picture, especially for those of you who are not that familiar with the agriculture business. Agco is one of the 3 largest global OEMs within agriculture machinery. We have grown through acquisitions over the last 30 years, which is why we are what we would call a multi-branded company today. And also why our operations are spread all over the world. We also like to define ourselves as a full line supplier with development, production and distribution of all types of agricultural machinery and related services and technologies. All the way from tractors and implements to self-propelled machinery like combines and sprayers, and even grain storage and grain handling is part of our portfolio. Now, like with most industries, our line of business are also experiencing this famous and somewhat cliched digital transformation these years. It is, though, a highly recognized vision across our industry that agricultural machinery will evolve through technology going forward, rather than through continuous scaling of the mechanics and the machinery, which has more been the trend in the past. It's also a clear strategy for Agco and for most of our competitors that we want to push technology towards semi and full autonomous vehicle solutions. Just like our automation solutions are expected to evolve from focusing on single machinery towards larger system of systems solutions. So even though we are currently at this kind of first plateau here in the marketplace, we have ongoing development projects on all 3 of these levels. Just for the sake of time here, I'm not going to dive into any specific projects per se. So I'm just going to wrap up here by sharing these examples of some of our major technology areas, in each of which we have several projects going on currently. This is also a quite good example of the diversity in our projects, and kind of also highlights the fact that the strategy I explained before is not just about robotics per se. In fact, we tend to heavily distinguish between robotics and autonomy as we talk about technology and product roadmaps. So while robotics is, in our view, is the disruption of our current vehicle platforms, like we know them today, autonomy, on the other hand, is more the advancement of automation to the point where an operator is no longer needed on the vehicle. So the key takeaway there is really that our focus is on providing solutions that will enable the farmer, our customers, to optimize his business. And technology for sure, and automation by and large, are essential for these solutions. With that being said, whether or not these solutions involve an operator on a vehicle or not is somewhat less important. And just as a closing remark here, I should of course also mention that while all of these 4 technology areas are now considered as strategic core competences within Agco, they have all been kickstarted through university collaboration, even in recent years. So if I should summarize the biggest value we have had through these partnerships with universities, it would be this kind of kickstarting of new technology domains. Because these type of partnerships, you don't only tap into specific resources and competences, you also tap into some proven methodologies on how to tackle these new technology domains. And that has been a really great benefit for us in order to grow these areas and grow our internal organization also really. So with that, I'll end this short introduction.
Thank you very much, Morten Wilde. This was very insightful to see. It seems like you moved from a very traditional heavy machinery into a high-tech robotics AI company. But could you elaborate on what this relationship with the university, how did it transform the relationship with the university that you worked with, and also the composition, the profile of your employees?
So like I said, it probably kickstarted our own development in that sense, because like you said, we are transforming as a company, and that means that we're not only transforming our products, we're also transforming our organization, which is really difficult in a big organization like ours. So one of the means that we have used is to, instead of trying to change the whole organization, we want to kind of establish some dedicated teams and sites and empower them to kind of run faster and embrace these new technologies, enabled more by the culture within those teams rather than establishing some rigid processes and structures, right? And in order to do that, these collaborations with the universities and these kind of kickstarting projects has enabled us to say onboard those technologies and also new people, new competences. And again, it's not just looking for engineers with a certain profile. We also need to really inherit the methodology behind that and how you attack certain automation problems, for example. And the university has been a really helpful enabler for that.
And Lazarus, perhaps you can elaborate on this, or
yes,
yeah.
Yes, I can happily add here that it actually works both ways. So also for us universities, it's very easy to just close ourselves in our campus and do the research that we would have normally done, but it's really beneficial to have actually the chance to deploy our ideas in real life, and having such dedicated partners like Agco has been for DTU. It gives us the chance to actually deploy and get feedback on how well they work and gather the data. And, nowadays everything is about having access to data, right? I mean, your research can be as good as your data are sometimes, and we're rather happy to have access to the vast amount of data that a company like Agco can generate. So in that sense, it's also really self-fulfilling for a university to help put their mark on the green transition, right? I mean, we are talking about making our world more sustainable and how well we need to work there. Sometimes we need some feedback on what works and what doesn't work and what we need to push. And this collaboration has been really beneficial in that respect too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I think now that it's time that we open the floor for questions, and we actually did receive some questions which I would like to answer you. And as I said in our initial dialogue with our speakers, that you can raise a hand, otherwise I'll just pick on you. But I think that what we've seen here is great research and private companies getting together and building a trust. So, but there's also, and it always arises, this question of intellectual property right. There is when collaborating with a university, there's a question regarding this, also after the project finishes. So is there anyone who would like to reply to this? Kasper, your reply has been posted on online YouTube, but for the viewers that will later watch this, perhaps you will answer first and then I'll move on to another one. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the whole question about IP is about realizing that we're working together, we're actually creating a bigger cake to share. And I think it's also very important to talk about the IP not as a problem or something that we should handle, but we should put it in a context where it creates value for all partners. And if we actually manage to create value for all partners, it's also very easy to share something that's real, combined in conjunction to sharing something that is not there yet. So I think it's all about getting a bigger pie together.
Thank you. Thank you. And Thomas Bach, did you perhaps want to elaborate? Because I know that you're working very hard and we actually have collaboration agreements that goes across all universities in Denmark. And it's been based on the collaboration agreements, including RPR rights, that Aalborg University has. So.
Yeah, I think we have a good model for selling IP that is generated in a project. Obviously, if both partners contribute to the IP that's being generated, that the cost of buying it will be reflected in that, and it's not very costly typically to buy IP. We sell, I think, 50% of the IP that's generated at Aalborg University. We managed to sell that. We sell it at a very early stage because then it costs less to buy, and the university saves a ton of money on trying to license some IP. But it is a surprisingly straightforward model. Of course, we cannot give it away. That's the Danish law, that universities cannot give away the IP, but we have. It's not in our interest to try and pretend that it's very valuable to us, because it's not. But potentially, it could be valuable to companies. And the department I'm from, we sell quite a lot of IP every year. That is typically within the mobile phone, wireless communication area, where Nokia, Bell Labs, Huawei, some of the other partners, they buy it at a very early stage for next to nothing.
Thank you very much. I think that Lathos, you probably want to add something here.
Yes, and I'm not sure if this is an answer or is a remark, but as the only foreigner in the company, I have to admit that I was surprised when I came to Denmark on how open people are, and how this mentality of collaborative working together, and as Kasper very nicely said, making the pie bigger for both of us, how this is so deeply embedded in the Danish culture. So it's universities working with companies, but also like universities collaborating with other universities, as we very nicely showcase in this webinar series, trying to generate a bigger cake for everybody. And yeah, it's just a foreigner's perspective. It's impressive to see it in action.
Yeah. I think actually that Henrik Gordon Petersen, Professor, you can also reply to this and tell us a little bit about how you have generated trust and how you are creating bigger pies. Henrik?
Yes, you can say a couple of things here. The first thing is that if a university would be stubborn on IP and companies would be dissatisfied, the universities would quickly run out of companies to collaborate with. That's the first thing. The second thing is that very, very often when new companies enter collaboration with us, companies that we didn't work with before, they are a bit worried about this IP, and this is understandable. But actually, in practice, I cannot recall even a single case where, in the end, the company was dissatisfied in the way the IP was handled, at least not at SDU, and I believe the same holds for the other universities. As Thomas said, we are very flexible and good in finding feasible solutions for the companies concerning the IP.
Mm-hmm. So you have been in, as you said, in the very beginning of working together with private companies from the University of Southern Denmark. Could you explain a little bit more about how you gain that trust between the private companies and the research environment?
Yeah, it's something that comes slowly. So when it's a matter of getting collaborations with companies that are satisfied, then rumors spread, and we just need to keep that up and make sure that we do a collaboration. It's also very much a matter of getting things straight to begin with. For example, often companies and universities, we work at different speeds. The companies need to realize that universities are working more long-term than companies, which are often more short-term. These are issues. It's important to address that to begin with, to also build up this trust. Thank
you. I think that Kasper, you were raising your hand as well. Kasper Hansen from Technicon. Did you want to add to this one?
Yes, I very much agree with Henrik on this one. But I think a thing that the Danish company and the Danish university in specific are very good at is that we are purpose-driven. When we are working together and we are building trust, we are always starting out with the problem. We are sitting on the same side of the disk, trying to solve what's in front of us. And when you have this common purpose of achieving something, trust is something that comes along the way. So it's all about getting some traction and having a common understanding on what we need to achieve together.
Thank you for this question. I think that Olav Jørgensen, you were at Turf Tank, also a very great example of how you have driven this forward. Am I not right? What you presented is that you had students coming in and working with this.
Correct. And I think for us, I would say it's in line with what Thomas also said. There has to be some ground rules, and we respect those, obviously, and it's something that is important. As with I would say an entire corporation to line out in the beginning. But I also agree with Henrik. This shouldn't be the main concern right now in entering into a corporation. Otherwise, we will not be able to get anywhere. So great ideas and great minds, bringing those together. Let's set some ground rules and then progress and take the developments as they come within those rules that have been defined from the beginning. And it should definitely not be something that should be discussed during a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday meeting. It should be something that you discuss once and then you go ahead.
So there's actually this question, and it moves me into the next question, is that private companies, you would like to move fast and to get the product out. And sometimes we see that researchers has a long line and they go for a long periods of time. So should academia look into industry current needs or focus on this abstract blue sky research that might be potentially useful in the future? I think that you could elaborate on this one as well. Should we take Lazarus? Would you elaborate on this one?
Yes, I think this is an interesting question, and I guess, as in many cases, the answer is somewhere in the middle. My own take on this is that both are very useful. As I said, having access to real research gives us the feedback that we need to channel our efforts. However, we still need to keep a part of our focus in the blue sky research, as you nicely said it. Because it is our tool that will provide us with some good ideas for the future. And if we run out of all those good ideas, then we will find ourselves replicating things. So we need to keep a little bit of our imagination purely out there, looking in the bigger picture as well. And I think that's the privilege of being in a university, that, I mean, you can actually do that, while like a company, they need to be more target oriented.
Thank you, Lazarus. I'm looking attentively to Henrik Gordon Petersen and Thomas Bach to see if the professors have something to add to this. And I know, of course, Thomas Bach, will you answer as well, or elaborate?
Yes. I think Lazarus it's a very good point. At a university, you have to have some research that can potentially be transformative, and that requires you to maybe not be out there solving these more immediate problems, but thinking on the long term. You need that. At the same time, you also need to engage with private companies and other institutions, so that you are open for what is happening in the world. And I think those two can coexist, maybe not in the same person necessarily, but a university has a number of people employed, and they have different perspectives time-wise.
Okay,
sure,
I completely agree with my two colleagues, and I can maybe add here with a little anecdote. So at some stage, a company approached me and asked for a problem to be solved, and they said it needed to be solved within 3 months. And I said this was not doable within 3 months, and there was not established a collaboration. Then approximately 5 years later, they apparently forgot they approached me in the first place. So they came back with the same problem, still being urgent. So sometimes problems are not so urgent, but the companies, of course, want the solution as fast as possible. And they need to realize that sometimes if a solution is possible to generate within 3 months, it's probably not the university that should find the solution. We work on more long-term difficult tasks. This was actually also a difficult task, but not doable in 3 months.
Thank you for this. I think that perhaps if you're private companies, you want to elaborate on this, you can go down to the bottom and go press reactions and raise your hand if you want to add on to this one. But actually, Henrik Gordon, you actually, Morten Wilde, sorry, I won't ask the next question. Morten Wilde, will you elaborate on this?
I mean, I agree with the comments here by and large. Again, by and large, the universities need to be on the forefront of technology and kind of be the ones to explore into the unknown and support industry with some sense of direction of what is possible from a technical standpoint going forward. But with that being said, it's also very crucial that the industry helps the universities with some guidance to kind of set the mission of their expedition, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. With our view of what will the business need going forward. And again, also the results from these explorations also need to materialize to solve even some short-term needs also. And this is where this close collaboration becomes really important, and the matchmaking between the needs and the technical opportunities are crucial.
Thank you for this. There's actually a question now where a large-scale robotic system. So let me read. At Siemens Gamesa, we need large-scale robotic gantry systems for wind turbine production. Is there any research going on in this direction? I think it's a very general question, in fact, that there might be private companies who are looking into, and also Henrik, you. How do you enter into the right door of the university is a question, and how do you gain that first initial collaboration? Would anyone reply to this? Otherwise, yeah.
I can say a bit about this. So we have, of course, since we had originally worked with Lindø, we have quite some experience in also working with large-scale systems. If you want to enter a university, you can contact maybe a leading professor, or if there is a tech transfer place, you can also try to enter there. That would be a typical place. Many would have maybe some personal entry point that they could try to exploit there. But it's probably not a general way of entering a university, you could say.
I think that from the Odense Robotics cluster, we try also we do get answers and requests of this. And there we also direct them toward the tech transfer centers and to the people there that can direct it to the right place. So as a cluster, we try to make sure. If it's a general need for many different private companies, we can actually initiate collaboration projects where we see if the idea that they have is valid, and we can pull in funding for and to create a small project to see if it has a valid ground. So I would actually ask another question now: are there any barriers to even future collaboration? Is there anything you say this is not going to happen? Perhaps Thomas Bach, you will reply to this one.
So the question is, are there any barriers to collaboration? Time is always a barrier on both sides. And I think one needs to, you need to find that time to build trust in the beginning, and then after that it becomes easier. But there is examples. I think our collaboration with companies typically starts with around a student project, because that's free. There's no risk associated with it, really. The only risk is that the company has to spend some time with these students and take them serious. If they do that, we build on that, and in that process, you would also find if there's any barriers that I think we would quickly pick that up. If they are not investing the necessary time to deal with the students, then they will probably not do that either with a project later on. So that's a little bit of an indicator in the beginning with the new relationship between a company and university.
A very good indicator. And time is actually running out now of our panel discussion. So is there anyone who wants to add something about the unique environment we have here? Then I think that Lazarus, as a foreigner here in the panel, I think that I would like to hear from you.
I think the pattern that has been emerging again and again in our discussion is how deeply in this collaboration between the researchers and the companies, how deep is the role of students to mediate this relationship. So it's actually also very, very Danish and very unique in this country. The role that students play and how companies are actually open to bring students, even bachelor students, to bring them in and share and invest time in them, shaping them into the future engineers that might be needed by the companies, but also like using them in order to bring new ideas and new thoughts in their company. So in that sense, I think that education is a tool with many uses in this ecosystem.
Thank you, Lazarus. I think actually this is the final word, because we promised we would end at 5:15, which is 7:15 in San Diego. So having said this, thank you very much for participating in this panel debate from the three universities: University of Southern Denmark with Henrik Gordon Petersen, with the University of Aalborg, Professor Thomas Bach, and with Lazarus from DTU. And thank you to the private companies, to Morten Bilde from Agco, to Olav Jørgensen from Turf Tank, and to Kasper Hansen from Technicon. We're very happy to have you here. And I'll give this word now to Henrik Christensen from San Diego. Once you unmute.
Okay, so I think I'm unmuted now. So first of all, thank you, Christina, and thank you to everyone. I also want to mention a little bit that I think my experience from working with the Danish universities is that there's a there's a full spectrum. From, you have to remember, it's not just sort of fancy PhD projects, that there are projects in terms of, you know, capstone projects for undergraduates, there's master's projects, there's PhD projects. So there's an entire spectrum. And in most cases, we have to remember that the most important result you get out of an R&D project is not necessarily the R&D. It's that you get access to the human capital. You get access to the smart students that you can hire in the companies afterwards, which is incredibly, by working with them, that's a really smart guy. I want to figure out, how do I hire this guy afterwards? So there's multiple aspects to this. Anyway, I want to come back and sort of try and wrap this up. So you've already seen an impressive set of R&D activities across this. You've seen how it's getting commercialized. This is only a very small sample. As Christina mentioned, there's more than 300 companies in Denmark that are sort of robotics companies. We've seen great research from Southern Danish University, from Aalborg Universities, and from DTU. But as Christina already mentioned, there are 7 universities in Denmark. So you haven't even heard from half of them yet. But you've heard sort of from the big ones, but there's still other, especially right now, you're seeing emergence of new groups in Denmark. But also you've not seen heard sort of from the big companies. There are some big companies like Mir, like UR, like Blue Ocean, like OnRobot. So there's quite a number of companies that you haven't heard from. So this is not necessarily the end of the story. Denmark is very famous for being very collaborative. The barrier to sort of entry is very low compared to many other places. And universities are remarkably non-sort of highbrow. You can walk in and sort of knock on the door and say, you know, I need to talk to you about blah. And it's not like, you know, the barrier to entry is very low. At the same time, there's a great collaboration with universities, but also there is a trend in Denmark of moving more and more towards that the students are very problem oriented. They're not just, let me show you how to solve differential equations, let me show you how to program in Python, but they're very organized about how do we solve real world problems. At the end of the day, the universities, you know, the most important product coming out are the students. It's the human capital. And for them, they need to not only sort of come out and then the universities have trained them, and then the industry comes in, well, let me train you on how really to solve problems. There's this trend now, very much in Denmark, of making sure that you get the right product in terms of human capital. So there's a high level of education, but there's also very strong translation. So there's a lot of support in Denmark. You saw Odense Robotics, but also, I think it was Kasper who mentioned the Manufacturing Academy of Denmark, which was sort of a network that was set up in particular in manufacturing to try and understand how can we bring together all the different entities in manufacturing to understand what are the good problems, how do we do translation, how do we go out and do real user studies on this, and how do we provide a catalyst for making sure that the gold that they're developing at the universities actually gets into use in the real world. So the Danish society has been very good at making these sort of strategic investments to make sure that it gets out there. Otherwise, we can't sort of grow the economy. Danes can't compete on low salary, but they can compete on smart brains. And so they're being very smart about, you know, how do we actually do this sort of the right way. So you've seen this small sample of academic research, translation, good examples of companies, but there's lots of room for even more of this. So we had originally only planned sort of 4 of these seminars. So this is sort of the last one of them. But you should expect to hear from us again before too long. I'm sure the other 4 universities are going to say, hello, we're here too. And there's a number of companies that would love to sort of do exposure of what's actually going on. And Denmark is a success story of how is robots actually being used in the real world. At the same time, one of the motivations for doing this webinar series was that there is all this success in Denmark, but there's been very few big international events in Denmark around this. So one of our not so hidden agendas is to actually make a bid for how do we make sure that more people come to Denmark and learn about the success stories, learn from what is going on here. A year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, before COVID, we made a bid to see if we could have sort of the largest robotics conference, the International Conference on Robotics and Automation in Copenhagen. We got beaten by London. Damn. But you know, that's okay. So that was our training session to figure out how do we make bids for big international events. So we will clearly come back. And I think our next bid for this is probably going for the big robotics conference 2026. We still need to have it in Denmark. We want to be able to show all of this really cool stuff going on. But also we want to continue, and we haven't necessarily decided on the format yet, how can we keep engaging people to sort of show them what's going on, and how do we tell you about this so that you can come and both as students, as companies, and as academics and participate in the Danish success story and in the Danish ecosystem. With that, we want to say thank you for attending these seminars. We very much appreciate the opportunity to tell you about all the cool stuff going on in Denmark. Thank you to the universities and thank you to the companies for devoting time to this. If you go and look at the webinars, you can tell they spent some serious time on this. It was not like, well, let's show up on Monday and put a video camera somewhere and do this. People really invested in this. So I would strongly encourage you to go back and look at the webinars. Thank you to the companies. Time is money. So we appreciate that you invested a little bit in helping us sort of promote what is going on in Denmark. As I said, we hope to return to you before too long with more ways both of engaging with Denmark. If you want to know more about what's going on in Denmark, you can always contact Odense Robotics. They are now the national cluster, so you can find more information there. But this is a lot of fun, and I would encourage you to go once the world sort of opens up to go and actually see some of the cool stuff going on in Denmark. Other than that, I hope you're staying well, staying healthy, and with that, we will say farewell and thank you for stopping by and seeing